If you're not political like myself, but still want to understand all this immigration talk, then you're in the right place. This video was initially inspired by a recent luncheon I attended. When the topic of current events, specifically immigration, came up, we realized that between the 6 of us, we had no idea what the facts were. So I decided to do my own research so I could explain everything in a simple, non-political form so that all Americans as well as other nations can follow along. To some, this might be old information. However, my research led me to biased opinions and only a few facts. I encountered a lot of misinformation from news sources, no surprise, but also politicians.
Budget committee, that's a deficit of $137 billion per year. Who do you think is...
And I even discovered some misconceptions migrants have. I'll break down the facts and list all the sources for verification to help with your own research or just to be better informed. Many nationalities have migrated over to the U.S. in the past 4 years. But for this video, we'll cover Venezuela the most, only because they're highlighted in the media right now. I've timestamped everything as followed. We'll look into how and why immigrants are receiving government assistance, different immigration statuses, we'll go through actual government data, and then lastly we'll look at the media blame game that plays a huge role. I also decided to include a section regarding the migrants. This information can help American people understand where they're coming from, but also help the immigrant understand where Americans are coming from, through the eyes of James, the U.S. taxpayer. To showcase the facts, I pulled information from different websites, articles, and video interviews. All links are in the description below. As stated previously, I'm not political. I watch the top recent events in short form. I don't access Instagram or TikTok regularly. My main platform of use is YouTube. I do follow a few content creators who consolidate trends and make videos on YouTube, which I appreciate greatly. It keeps me updated without having to go into those platforms. I will also include their content for reference. With all that being said, let's begin. Like most Americans, we saw the enormous amount of immigrants coming in caravans through the media. And to be honest, I thought their efforts would be in vain because there's no way that the United States of America would allow them to come in. I was wrong. U.S. immigration has always been very strict, but not during the Biden administration. When the immigrants addressed the media on their journey, they would say that they're running from hardship and violence in their country. I do remember hearing about their economy collapsing years ago, but then I thought, well, they're technically in Mexico now, away from their country. Isn't that considered refuge? I was confused, but I assumed the government had their reasons. I went on with my daily life and assumed that this would pass soon. American citizens grew very upset over the amount of immigrants coming in. I didn't hear much more until summer of 2024, when an immigrant food receipt went very viral by a grocery store employee, highlighting to everyone that migrants were receiving an enormous amount of government assistance. Outrage immediately followed. The average American does not have that kind of assistance available to them. Many citizens struggle to keep up with inflation, debt, and expensive healthcare. The American economy is not what it used to be. Americans voice their outrage, while others bragged about it.
The thing about being a big family is the food stamps that we get.
Here are 4 reasons on why I will never get a job.
I don't know why everybody is hating on me for
whom now Elon Musk has referred to as the parasite class, which did not go over well with some. As soon as President Trump took office, then this happened. Immigrants and American citizens were cut off from food stamps. From the outside looking in, it just looked like everyone got put on a timeout. Now, let's look at what visas receive benefits. The U.S. has about 185 different types of visas. Here, I've highlighted some of the most commonly used, and for this video, we'll focus on these 5 visas as they seem to be highlighted the most in the news right now. I want to be clear that I'm not a lawyer. All my findings are public knowledge that can be traced back to its source. Please seek your own counsel through a credible and knowledgeable immigration lawyer with real success testimonies. Good representation is crucial when it comes to immigration. Bad advice from those independent immigration services or hiring an incompetent immigration lawyer who only seeks payments and fees with no results will only waste your time, your money, and prolong your application. That is if they've even filed an application on your behalf. Immigrants get scammed every day by hiring the wrong representative. I've heard of some really sad stories where immigrants believe to be getting help, only to find out that nothing's been filed on their behalf years later. So just make sure you hire a good lawyer that knows the law and truly wants to help their clients. That's just a disclosure I felt like I had to include. Okay, to understand the immigration statuses, let's quickly go through the difference. First, they're citizens, those who were born in the U.S. or became citizens through a long and expensive process. Not everyone can apply. There's guidelines, and you do have to be eligible. It's worth noting that only a U.S. citizen may vote. Next, it's a permanent resident. This is what you would call a green card holder. The third one is a non-immigrant. It's a temporary visa. Let's remember this one because we're going to circle back around to this. It's still legal status, but it's not a permanent residency. Lastly, there's undocumented, which means they do not hold a green card nor a visa. This is what the news media keeps referring to as illegal. It's important to know how one can obtain full citizenship. I heard this sweet lady at the luncheon say, I wonder why they don't take the citizens test to get legalized. I don't know much about immigration, but I do know it's not that easy. It would be nice to take an exam and be done with immigration issues. However, in order to gain citizenship, you must be a green card holder for at least 5 years with no crime history. But in order to become a green card holder, you first must qualify for a visa. You see, you have to work your way up. It takes time, a clean record, money for your applications, and lawyer. The visa is the starting point, and not all visas offer a path to residency. Some visa holders are stuck renewing their visa every 2 years for 10 years or more. The visa is where the hiccup starts for some. Some don't meet all the requirements to qualify for a temporary visa, so they decide to come in with no visa in hopes of a better life. And in some cases, they do become successful with businesses and resources, and others manage a simple yet safe life for their children. That is as the left promotes. On the other hand, immigrants are criminals and live off the government, as the right promotes. I won't influence either side. I only want to inform you of the facts, not opinions. Now, first up is DACA. Pause to read the requirements straight from the U.S. Immigration Government website. DACA and the term dreamers are the same. I've noticed that people get confused. It's basically the same. Dreamers was just a term that was given to them by the media before President Obama made an official program for them called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, which abbreviates to DACA. It basically gives this group of immigrants authorization to work legally in the States. It was created in 2012, and when former President Obama created this, he was very specific on who can qualify and who can renew. They cannot have any type of criminal record, otherwise they cannot renew their DACA. It's every 2 years. So DACA now has been around for 12 years, and it still has no path to permanent residency. This program has a bumpy history. Former President Obama pushed for this program, and despite Congress' decision, some say that he overstepped. However, the window to apply was cut short anyhow because legal battles started disputing this program. When President Trump took office the first term, he canceled any new applications coming in. And in 2018, U.S. courts decided the program would no longer accept new applicants but would remain for renewals only. Then in 2021, Biden decided to reenact DACA. It's unclear what he changed. I could not find the specifics. But one lawyer did mention that he extended the qualifications. But again, I couldn't find what those qualifications were. But it was something that Governor Abbott did not like because he was the only state to dispute Biden's new DACA version. Because of this disagreement, Biden's DACA version was paused just the following year in 2022. Some immigration lawyers have mentioned that Biden's version is up for review with immigration currently. 12 years of data now shows the contribution they have made. They are taxpayers, yet not eligible for government assistance or Social Security benefits, which some in Washington are still unclear of.
Thought I heard you say earlier, did you say $13 billion in funding is contributed annually to the U.S. economy by illegal immigrants. Is that the number I heard you say?
Not illegal. These are DACA recipients who have the.
Did I get the number right? 13 billion. Is that right?
That's right.
Do you know what the cost is to the open border crisis that we're dealing with right now?
I do not.
Well, I'll tell you, the House Budget Committee estimates that the total net cost to the United States from the border crisis, quote, is more than 150 billion a year, with the lion's share of that going to educate children who are here illegally themselves or whose parents are here without authorization, end quote. That's from the House Budget Committee. That's a deficit of 137 billion per year. Who do you think is picking up that $137 billion tax, that price tag?
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
what are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people, and in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
you want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do.
Okay.
I want to be able to work something out. And it should have been able to be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years. And it never got worked out. You know, Biden could have done it because he controlled, Congress to a certain extent, right? He could have done something, but they didn't do it. I never understood why, because they always seem to want to do it. But then when it comes down to it, they don't. I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Next visa is the famous H-1B visa. This one is highly favored by Musk. It's thought of only for tech jobs, but it actually extends to other occupations as well. This visa does offer a pathway to permanent residency. The employer does have to file on their behalf. They use a lottery system that is only open once a year.
I want to stop. And I'm not just talking about engineers. I'm talking about people at all levels. We want competent people coming into our country. And HB1, I know the program very well. I use the program. Maitre d's, wine, experts, even waiters, high quality waiters. You got to get the best people. Now, then you go into people like Larry, and he needs engineers, and Massa needs, and this gentleman needs engineers like nobody's ever needed engineers, right? So we have to have the quality people coming in. Now, by doing that, we're expanding businesses, and that takes care of everybody. So I'm sort of on both sides of the argument, but what I really do feel is that we have to let really competent people, great people come into our country, and we do.
Now, TPS, the visa that caused a bit of a stir.
Why is the border more overwhelmed under your watch, Mr. President?
Biden is facing political pressure to curb the number of illegal crossings.
What's on my watch now is Venezuela.
Venezuelans have been one of the largest groups of migrants involved in such crossings, in part because Washington granted temporary protection status in 2021 to those who were on U.S. soil. On top of this, the U.S. broke down diplomatic relations with Venezuela in 2019, making it harder for the U.S. to deport Venezuelans than other nationalities. Separately, the U.S. has said it will allow up to 24,000 people from Venezuela to apply for humanitarian entry, but they must come by air.
This visa does not qualify for benefits, but we'll discuss on how they're receiving this government assistance later on in this video. This next visa I had never heard of before. It's a program specifically designed for these 4 nations. President Trump also quickly terminated this program as soon as he entered his second term. The last visa to review is Asylum Refugee visa. This one is eligible for government assistance, and the difference between these two is the asylum seekers come to the U.S. border versus refugee seekers who can apply from abroad.
Since the United States launched a program to resettle refugees displaced by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The policy known as Uniting for Ukraine has allowed U.S. citizens to sponsor the arrival of more than 100,000 Ukrainian refugees with resounding efficiency and relatively little controversy. CBS News.
Now let's look into Venezuela. Most are reported to have TPS visas, but in some cases, some were granted asylum status. Venezuela has been on the move for many years. They first sought refuge in Colombia and other nearby countries.
You need proof of how bad it is in Venezuela right now. Look at this purse. This purse is made entirely of the bills of the Venezuelan currency, the bolívares. Inflation is so high that this money is now completely worthless. And so my friend Jorge over here has gathered a ton of this stuff and turned it into commodities, into purses, into sculptures.
It is worse than it sounds, and it sounds pretty bad.
The country's inflation rate will rise to 1,000,000%.
Erupted over allegations that Sunday's presidential election was stolen by the country's authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro.
Venezuela has been under civil distress for many years. There was hope that President Maduro would finally step down and the country could start restoring, but that was not the case. He is still president to this day. So now that we know a little bit on why they left their country, let's look at the number of visas that increased during their migration to the U.S. 10.4 million non-immigrant visas were issued in just 1 year alone. And to recap, the non-immigrant visas are those temporary visas we talked about earlier. There's 2 government websites that provide the list. However, I prefer the state gov list for the formation. I think it's a lot clearer in my opinion. Plus, it divides it by regions. So here I'll show you the exact links I used in case you want to go back and review it for yourself. doing your research, always make sure you're using an official government website just to ensure that you're getting accurate information. Here we see who's eligible for government assistance and how to apply. And to recap from all the visas that we discussed, we see that only asylum and refugee seekers are eligible for SNAP benefits / food stamps. It is nice that children and the disabled have no waiting period. Now, I know what you're thinking. That can't be true because we've all seen that viral receipt and the migrants themselves have been bragging about all the benefits they get online. And yes, you're right. So where's the money coming from if it's not from SNAP benefits? It's from FEMA, the program designed to give Americans relief after a catastrophe event. And in combination with sanctuary states and cities, here we can see the recent list of registered sanctuaries. This is what the New York City mayor has been using to facilitate the immigrants. And even though President Trump has blocked any further assistance, and the mayor claims there's no more shelters available, this New York City resident reports otherwise. He visited new renamed shelters, which made me pause and think about the country's current leadership in the sense of local, state, and federal. This is why I believe change starts at home. Regardless if you're for or against immigrants, there are certain people that are gifted with powerful leadership skills, yet do not use them out of fear most likely. So what happens is the wrong people are given powerful positions and make laws and use this position to gain wealth and authority over others for the wrong reasons. Here is a recent and perfect example, the homelessness epidemic in Los Angeles. A judge finally demanded an explanation to this continued problem. Billions have gone towards this cause and efforts to solve it, yet nothing has changed, and only it's gotten worse. The courts found that the county officials did not verify the services they paid for. This is one of the top 5 issues in Los Angeles. And yet, what is obvious is that to their core, they did not care to solve the issue. Someone who holds any issue seriously, whether homelessness, animal protection, children's advocate, whatever cause pulls you, would have that initiative inside of them to follow up and to make an effort to visit this organization that you've paid to make sure that they're stewarding the funds properly. In this case, it seems they threw money at the problem and moved on. Out of sight, out of mind. This is the example of a wrong person in power. If you have that strong desire to bring justice to certain causes or feel that your ethnicity is not well represented, then this is your call to action. Start at home. Start in your own county. Run for council. If there's requirements you cannot meet yet, then start an independent organization that advocates for your cause. During my research, I came across this app that lets you express your concerns to Congress for those who are political.
Polls are one of the biggest ways that members measure, it's not just numbers, it's how they measure enthusiasm.
In the last few weeks since Trump's been in office, there's been a huge uptick in calls to reps to the point where voicemail boxes are full. There's executive orders, cabinet picks, and overall Musk fuckery going on that people are calling to express their disdain for. I know making a call is like the last thing any of us want to do, but like everything, there's an app for that.
Thanks for calling the office of Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill. How may I help you?
5 calls lists your reps, gives you a script, and lets you pick the issues you care about most. It's literally so easy. Here's me showing my mom how to do it. And for the introverts, you get over the fear of making a phone call pretty quickly, and there are ways to email them if that's easier for you. Why does this make a difference? Representatives need to listen to what their constituents, aka their voters who got them this job, want. Even if you live in a blue area, you call and make sure your representatives are voting the way you want them to.
Now, as I expressed in the beginning of this video, my number one reason for creating this content was because of the insane amount of misinformation I came across. It amazed me that no one seemed to question it, or at the very least verify it. It's so easy to do. Yes, it's time consuming, but not hard to find. Knowledge is not power if you don't do anything with it. So I encourage you to seek information for yourself and stop letting influencers and news media rewrite history. Getting and keeping your attention is their job. It's how they earn a living. The media wants to keep you on edge. You watch their reportings long enough and it fills your mind with their beliefs. Both sides are guilty of this. Anything you consume with so much devotion will end up consuming you. You will be walking with their belief system and no longer yours.
Of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so therefore, you are subject to deportation.
Masks off officers' faces and spraying.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutation?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there where we're doing further research. Nice to see you again. So this is a big one. Anything you want to explain about this? We hope they get them. We hope they come out tonight, frankly. They're expecting it. Approximately 1,500 people.
Let's be clear. All presidents have taken questionable liberties. The New York Times reported that President Biden made a few family pardons at the last minute of his presidency. I mention this to show the bias in it all from all sides. Even though the administration refers to the undocumented as illegal, it's important to mention that illegals as well as American criminals still have rights in this country. Being labeled illegal does not give the right for others to violate them, because in turn, then you yourself will be considered a convicted criminal. A new piece of information I was not aware of is how undocumented people are allowed to purchase a home. I was not aware of this. I honestly thought that at least one person in the home on that loan had a social security number. I was surprised and curious on how this could be. I came across a popular YouTube family sharing their self-deport story and mentioned how they're selling their home and their belongings and moving to Mexico. So I obviously had to know more. There's a number called I-10. It's like a substitution for a social security number, but this number is only to register with the IRS to pay taxes. In reality, they don't need to register, but a lot of them do this to show that they're not a burden to the government, and in hope this will favor them one day when applying for legal status. This number is what allows them to purchase property. That seems like a financial risk. If they get forcefully deported, then they default on their loans. Best case, investors get richer. Worst case, it's a housing crisis all over again. The banks will need to be bailed out by taxpayers if undocumented homeowners suddenly get deported. I've included a clip of their story. It's in Spanish, but there is English subtitles.
Dices, bueno, pues compremos una casa, ¿no? Empiezas con la ilusión del sueño americano. Compra tu casa, compra tu
perro,
tu propiedad.
Tu casa. Es que el sueño americano es la casa, la camioneta, el carro, los hijos y el perro.
Y la propiedad, ¿no? O sea, es ese sueño que todos tienen de quiero tenerlo. ¿Sí me explico? Me lo merezco. Te lo hacen posible, te lo hacen posible. Aquí en este país, si tú no tienes documentos, aún así te venden una casa. Eso es para que ustedes sepan al punto de dónde llega la situación aquí, en este país, de que te permiten tantas cosas a pesar de no tener documentación. ¿Ok? Y es donde uno empieza a caer en la trampa. Porque tú estás atrapado aquí en el sistema. Estás atrapado en una ilusión. ¿Ok?
Again, this is surprising to me. I didn't know this was happening. But it is interesting, you know, once I have it all laid out and look at it, how they were allowed to buy a home, but yet there's just no access to even a temporary visa. Like there's no solution around that, but they did find one for IRS. So that was interesting. I also came across this Instagram content creator. She is a law student currently and an immigration advocate. She had a green card at one point, and in 2018, she went to court. She had committed some crimes, and she was under the impression she was going to go to prison, but instead she was deported. She is advising on this document that really saved her. It's a legal guardianship for her American children, because she was deported and they don't give you time to get your affairs in order. She had to go right then and there. So her mother was able to get the kids' passports and take them out of school and do all the things to get them in order so they could be with their mother. So this seems like good information to have if someone you know is in that situation, to make sure any little ones get situated as well. Moving on to the media blame game. This was my least favorite part of my research. It's wild to me how different news channels can view the same thing yet spin it into their own favor. It's impressive yet maddening at the same time. However, it's the gift of free speech, and it's something that we should all be very grateful for. With free speech not only comes news reporting, but also social media content creators with very strong opinions. There's a few that I came across that you can tell really want to inform their audience well and care about the matter, but the majority just want to exploit and exaggerate situations for clickbait and views. Just based off their thumbnails and their title, it usually didn't even match their content. Again, this is their job. It's important for them to keep your attention. And we'll view Elon Musk's program for this example. We'll see what the left has to say and then what the right has to say. We all know a little bit about what the program that he's running is for. And the easiest way I could explain it was that Elon Musk is helping Lady Liberty balance out her checkbook, kind of like an accountant does.
Let's go! We believe it's an historic moment for the country, and these two gentlemen are going to help navigate through this exciting new day. Elon and Vivek don't need much of an introduction here in Congress for certain, and most of the American people know what they're capable of and what they've achieved. We have long lamented the size and scope of the government, that it has grown too large. And let me be frank about this. Government is too big, it does too many things, and it does almost nothing well. And the taxpayers deserve better. We're very frustrated by what the Biden administration appears to be doing right now, and that is, as you said, shoveling money. As someone said on a hidden camera on a clip that I saw, someone in the administration who's charged with distributing the funds said it's like we're dumping gold bars off the Titanic here at the end.
You know, the lack of cohesiveness on that side is why this has been the most unproductive Congress. People all over X and everything is like, well, they don't deserve anything. They're so unproductive. Let me tell you, the people that y'all keep putting in charge are the reason that we are unproductive, because they don't understand how to govern. And honestly, they don't even have a will to govern. And the fact that they are allowing somebody who basically is a shadow president to come out and tell them what to do, including Donald Trump, because listen, we know that Elon, as they have touted about how they need to get rid of the immigrants. Let me be clear. Elon cannot become president of the United States because he is an immigrant who has gained U.S. citizenship later on in life. So he's not qualified to be, or he's not allowed to be under our Constitution. So instead, he decided that he was going to buy a president. And right now, he is pulling all the strings on Trump.
Taylor at Spectrum News. You talked a bit about DOGE. Elon Musk is currently
quote, special government employee who also owns companies that have billions of dollars in federal contracts. You said earlier this week that he has abided by all applicable federal laws, but what steps is the Trump administration taking to address that conflict of interest?
The president was already asked and answered this question this week, and he said if Elon Musk comes across a conflict of interest with the contracts and the funding that DOGE is overseeing, then Elon will excuse himself from those contracts. And he has, again, abided by all applicable laws. In the back left, go ahead.
Listening to both sides this last couple of weeks, it's like being around that couple that's always fighting. That's the easiest way I can explain it. Each party has valid points, and their concerns sound reasonable. Yet they just can't agree on anything without humiliating each other first. It just seems they're more interested in winning the argument than they are trying to meet each other halfway for the greater good. And this has been going on since the early 90s.
When Americans turned on their TVs in the early 1990s, one contentious issue was hard to miss: immigration.
Is immigration good for America?
The federal government won't stop them at the border.
You spend $5.5 billion a year to support them.
There's a right way and there's a wrong way.
At the time, there were around 5 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. And most Americans saw immigrants as a burden on the country, taking jobs, housing, and healthcare, and thought immigration as a whole should be decreased.
Our country is invaded by immigrants who are like cancer cells.
That same year, Republicans ran on a tough on immigration platform and took control of Congress.
30 years later, we're still having the same discussion. We have to remember that the U.S. is still young compared to other nations. The U.S. is nearly 250 years young. She's still learning, but she'll get there eventually. It's repeated in the U.S. how American citizens demand to be put first. U.S. citizens want to be acknowledged and taken care of before the interest of foreigners, which is not an unfair request. I also keep hearing Americans say that the U.S. government needs to take care of their own country and stop funding others, which makes sense. However, something that was highlighted during my research is that as much as we'd like to keep everything the same and leave their other countries to their own chaos, it's not that simple. Civil unrest, war, unlivable conditions will result in migration. Syria had one of the largest exodus due to war. Venezuela's issue started in 2015, but it came to our front door in 2021. Ukraine, Gaza is starting to flee now too. The U.S. funding a foreign cause is to try to eliminate the problem from expanding and getting closer to home. It's not just the U.S. with migration issues. It's difficult to ignore the problem if it keeps growing, so it's better to try to stop it and get ahead of it by funding it for a solution. This next portion is entirely my opinion. I decided to include it based on my findings. Venezuelans have a different approach to immigration than what we're used to here, and I was a little confused on why. I'm not sure if they're aware of the cultural differences in the U.S. Yes, you heard that right. They may not be aware, only because the history of their land. In 2024, we saw many posts from Venezuelan immigrants go viral. Even the New York Post reported on it. And it made me wonder why. It's unusual behavior to brag, disrespect, and demand from a newly arrived immigrant. Then I thought maybe it's because they're a different culture and have different way of thinking. It's not an excuse, but maybe it's at least an explanation. I was reminded of a story when my son was a toddler. We were visiting his paternal grandparents who are Buddhist. And in Buddhist households, they'll have a little altar with an offering plate or shelf for their god. And these plates usually have money, or they'll have fruit or rice. You'll also see this a lot in Thai restaurants. Well, my son, being small and not knowing the difference, he looked at it as a fruit bowl. He brought me a banana so I could peel it. I was shocked, and I quickly got up and put it back, and hopefully nobody saw. But it reminded me of that because I thought he didn't know at the time. I had to tell him later on. That story came to mind, and I think it's because maybe they don't know because they're so used to the ways of their country. So I looked into their culture. Venezuela is a socialist nation. Their belief system stems from depending on the government to survive. And 20 plus years of this, it's not a mentality that just easily goes away. It didn't help that they came during the Biden administration where they were given an open door and a visa and shelter and food and benefits. I mean, to them, that seemed normal. That was like back in the day, back in their country when it was the same there too. So if you think about it from their mentality, from their point of view, all the assistance that was offered to them, that was normal to them. The U.S. media mentioned that Mexico was helping the immigrants overwhelm the U.S. border. But when I was doing this research and went back and looked at the Spanish side of the news, that doesn't seem to be the case, because this is a video of these immigrants complaining that Mexico is not allowing them to advance. They're currently located in Chiapas, Mexico. I pinned it on the map here. They're trying to get to Mexico City, I'm assuming because the U.S. Embassy is there. I'll play a portion of this video. They are speaking Spanish, but there's English subtitles.
CBP One y esperar nuestra cita. No queremos cruzar de manera ilegal, pero no nos dejan llegar a Ciudad de México.
¿Somos de Venezuela?
Habemos de Venezuela, Honduras, colombianos, haitianos, ecuatorianos. En México aquí uno habla porque México es un país bueno y bonito y se gana plata. Mejor que donde estábamos nosotros, por lo menos en nuestro país. Gracias a México y a todos los mexicanos que nos ayudan aquí, porque ellos nos traen la comida y están pendientes de nosotros. Ahorita vino una psicóloga, jugó con los niños, los puso a colorear a los niños, porque los niños llevan un trauma psicológico.
Now, this next news reporting, he is talking about how Haitians integrate really well, but Venezuelans have a harder time.
En nuestro país, los haitianos se integran muy rápidamente. Buscan trabajo, quieren trabajar, se integran muy bien en diferentes comunidades del norte de nuestro país. Los venezolanos no. Hay algunas versiones de personas que dicen, pues los venezolanos no quieren trabajar, y hay quienes dicen que no saben trabajar porque han vivido prácticamente 1 o 2 generaciones con los apoyos del gobierno.
I'll link this video if you're interested in seeing them. But these Haitians, they speak full, clear Spanish. I mean, their Spanish is better than mine. But it makes me happy for them. Their country's really going through it right now. So I'm happy to see that they're thriving somewhere.
Si ustedes no pueden resolver sus problemas en su tierra, no vengan a causar más problemas en la mía.
After listening and watching all these different countries' news reporting, it just makes me wonder if, are they a troubled nation, or did we not properly integrate them?
Eso no es posible.
Eso es un centro de detención. Eso no es un albergue, es un centro de detención.
Nosotros venimos a trabajar, que nos den permiso de trabajo, nosotros paguemos nuestras cosas, pagar impuestos.
La ciudad y el Estado tienen dinero suficiente para darle albergue a todo el mundo.
Aquí no nos vamos a poder.
No sea mala gente, no sea egoísta con nosotros los inmigrantes, que nosotros somos seres humanos igual que usted. Denos la oportunidad de poder pasar para allá arriba. Tan siquiera denos la oportunidad para subir a Canadá, ya que no nos quieren en tu país.
Nos vamos de aquí de Nueva York, nos quedamos aquí en Nueva York, yo y mi gordito. Entonces, por favor, respóndame el otro video que le mandé. Si usted no va a sacar, dándonos $20,000 porque este hijo mío es de Nueva York, es estadounidense.
I understand how it seems that the state has money. They've been using FEMA funding, which is for natural disasters that happen in the country, to help alleviate American citizens. I think because they've migrated all through South America and are used to just given passage through, they might be thinking it the same way. But here you need a visa to get in the States, even if you're just passing through to get to Canada. This one surprised me. Somebody told them that by having an American child, they're basically citizens. The child is a citizen and the child can file on their behalf when they're 21. But that's just the starting. There's a lot of requirements to that visa. This last clip I left out because I could hardly understand him. But he was saying how comfortable he's been this past year living off the government. And to that, I say that there's people that go to prison for abusing the system. And again, I don't know if they didn't explain all this stuff to them when they were applying and receiving this food benefit. I do recommend to go over to the Spanish side of the news media and TikTok and everything to get a clearer picture of everything. If you don't speak Spanish, you can always use subtitles. But it does make more sense when you go on that other side of the media. Let's be clear, not all Venezuelans are like this. There's content creators like this that are Venezuelan, that are exposing them and not in agreement with what they're doing and are reporting them. So not all Venezuela thinks this way. It's just unfortunate that, you know, those few that were loud and up to no good ruined it for the rest of them.
Y sí, a todos nos gusta sacarle en cara a las demás nacionalidades que nosotros sí tenemos papel.
Now let's finally meet James. James is your average American citizen working hard, trying to support his family. Let's see what he has to say about immigration funding. This is James. He's a taxpayer. He was told working full-time would provide security and financial reimbursement at retirement. James works at least 40 hours a week. Him and his coworkers enjoy the stability and the income it provides. James is checking his accounts and noticed there's a lot of taxes being deducted. He's suspicious about how his taxes are being used, but the government tells him that the money is being well administrated and it's going to go to a good cause for the betterment of Americans and its country. James is watching the news one day and sees many immigrants coming into the country. James immediately questions, who is paying for this? James is mad. He did not consent to have his tax money go towards other nations. It was to benefit American citizens. James thinks it's unfair. He works so hard and has little to no assistance. Most of his earnings go towards living expenses. What about his retirement? He was told that paying into Social Security would help sustain him at his older age. And what about the mountain of other problems in our country, like how we're losing entire cities to drugs, generation to addiction, and working people are experiencing homelessness, fires, and natural disasters? Our veterans also need help. They need housing. They risk their lives to serve this country. Officers need a raise. They keep us safe. Our little ones need better education, and teachers need more help. Even the White House has a list of their own.
On that disinformation in Kazakhstan, I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single one of you.
Our elderly needs us. They have worked so hard and no longer have the energy to continue at the same pace. They have earned the right to retire in peace without having a part-time job to sustain them. Now there's this. There's no funding for us, the taxpayer, but you can help them. The amount of taxes we pay to the government shouldn't go towards immigrants.
Fine. What are all these taxes you keep mentioning?
Let's start with our payroll taxes. Here's an example. This is a bi-weekly check that says $1,400. But we only see $1,044. Taxes are automatically taken out of our paycheck before we can see them. But that's not all. We have more taxes. If you own a home, there's annual property taxes. Own a car, there's annual registration fees. You run a small business, jackpot, they got you. You really owe the government now. Then file yearly income taxes. Be careful not to misreport your income. The IRS is the only department that will jail the rich and famous for not paying taxes. What if you decide to live abroad as a U.S. citizen and skip tax season? Nope, you still have to report in. The government tells us how they use our taxes, but we're never sure. Aside from taxes, there's a concern about the violence that followed. A group of dangerous foreigners that have been recruiting for years. Even our Latin American citizens came together to support deportation in the last election for that reason.
To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come.
Other nations have also complained about the gang violence. We worry about our citizens' safety. We have seen what violence can do to other countries, and we love our country too much to let it see get destroyed. We don't mind different cultures. We have many here. The issue is the demand of taxpayers' funds and the inability to adapt to our country's culture and laws.
Aceptar una dura realidad, y es que el enemigo de nosotros nunca fue el peruano con xenofobia, el chileno con xenofobia, nunca fue Trump con las deportaciones, nunca fueron los extorsionadores en México, nunca fueron ellos. El peor enemigo del venezolano fue el propio venezolano, porque sí, no nos podemos meter todos en el mismo saco. Y otros dirán, ¿para qué vas a generar división entre venezolanos? ¿Qué te pasa? Venezuela es el país con las personas más divididas en la actualidad. A los chavistas nunca les importó más que defender su voto. Esos fueron nuestros primeros enemigos. Ni siquiera padres que escogieron a sus hijos, que sus hijos no se fueran del país antes de mantener a Maduro en el poder. No les bastó con hacernos huir del país a muchos, bien sea por persecución o por hambre. Y no les bastó eso, sino que cuando la situación se puso difícil para ellos, también salieron del país. Y no salieron con las mismas intenciones que nosotros. Salieron con la intención de seguirnos jodiendo, creando caos en otros países, creando noticias en otros países, asesinando, delinquiendo, robando. Y no conforme con eso, llegaron a Estados Unidos y se apoderaron de TikTok. Y nosotros, en vez de frenar y denunciar esas cuentas, lo que hicieron fue seguirlos, darle fama, repostearlos, hacerlos noticias y que llegaran al New York Times, como hicieron con Leíto Oficial, y pare de contar con la cantidad de personas que ustedes hicieron famosas. Porque en vez de unirnos como nación y deportar todo eso, lo que hicimos fue compartirlos y seguirlos. Hasta generaban dinero con eso. Y lo que yo más lamento de todo esto es que va a pagar más de un inocente el comportamiento de ellos. Pero creo que su única metodología de vida ha sido jodernos a todos los venezolanos de bien. Porque todo video que hicieron lo hicieron con malicia, hasta el último tren de menos mal que soy venezolano, burlándose de los mexicanos sin papeles, cuando ellos solamente tenían una protección temporal, y yo creo que es que no saben la definición de temporal. Ahora los ves llorando, porque perdieron el TPS, pero hace unos meses se estaban burlando de toda una nacionalidad que lleva años haciendo vida en este país. Y no solamente ellos, sino sus propios paisanos que también llevan muchos años haciendo vida en este país. No, señores, el enemigo no son los demás. El enemigo fue el propio venezolano, porque fue el venezolano el que escogió a Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías, fue el venezolano el que escogió a Nicolás Maduro. Ha sido el venezolano que ha salido a vivir de otros gobiernos, porque no van a decir, tú sí trabajas y él no. Porque no van a ir a entrevistar al que está trabajando, van a ir a ver al que está robando, porque recuerden que las noticias dominan el mundo. Nos jodieron la vida adentro y afuera de Venezuela. Y hay unos cuantos todavía que tienen seguidores y están haciendo dinero por cada video que publican. Qué mal, de verdad, qué mal.
Something to note about immigration is that time opportunity for immigrants always depends on who is in office. Right now, President Trump is revamping an investor visa and calling it a gold card visa. Regardless of your feelings for President Trump, he was elected, and wishing him bad now means that the American people would also have to be harmed in the process. I'm choosing to hope for the best. And with that note, I leave our neighbors with a positive message.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. They understood what I was saying. And she said something that really got me. I said, you're not a big drug taking nation? And she said, no, we are not a consumer. And I said, a consumer, what an interesting word. We're not a consumer nation. We're not a consumer of drugs. I said, what an interesting, and why is that? She said, well, we have very strong family values. I said, but we do too. In speaking with her, she said about family values, I said, well, you're not really saying anything there because we have great families too. We have great family values. She said, plus we advertise a lot. I said, ooh, you mean you advertise about how bad drugs are? Yes, we do. We spend a lot of money on advertising. And I said, unbelievable. That was such a great conversation because we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars advertising how bad drugs are so that kids don't use them, that they chew up your brain, they destroy your teeth, your skin, your everything. And I thanked her for that. You know, I make so many calls and I never learn anything from anybody. I know everything and I never learn anything from anybody. And I spoke to this woman. As soon as she said it, she didn't have to say exactly what. I said, exactly. What a great idea.
What do you want Americans to know about indigenous people?
That we're still here. We're not going nowhere. We're real. We're still here. We're going to be here forever. We're the original human beings. We're the first peoples here.
That we're very important.
That we're still here. You know what's funny? Everyone has kind of said that answer, we're still here. Yeah. Why are people saying that answer?
Well, I think it's because of media and, society. We've always been genocide through our history.
They think that we became extinct.
We don't want to be treated no different than anybody and to give us all the respect.
We need to learn not just your own history, but local history to truly have that respect.
We're still here. You're not going to get rid of us. Oh, I'm over
This country's history has some beautiful chapters as well as some dark ones. It's important to know so we can stop repeating the same mistakes. Remember, change starts at home. Hate is taught. We must learn from our mistakes. I really hope you are inspired, or at least a bit more informed than before. At the end of the day, we're fortunate to experience this country. It's easy to be caught up in the troubles of our own home bubble, but it's important to remember that there's a whole world outside of the States. I also want to wish peace and prosperity to all other nations, all unique and beautiful in their own way. This was my tiny perspective from my corner of the world. Thank you for watching to the end. Now go out and do good things in the world.